he would literally have to get himself just, okay, I'm lifting my legs up. And then something would kick in, he'd start slowing down, then he'd lean forward. And that's how he can motivate. Parkinson's, apparently, among other things, if you have a dividing line, you'll freeze. If you look at it, your body just goes, oh, there's something there, and people will freeze. So he had all those characteristics. He had all these additional things as well. His daughter, writing on his website, is fairly convinced that all of this was augmented by living in here for so long under lower oxygen. But he had had enough other symptoms that it really wasn't culpable. I mean, there was no litigation over it that I know of. Anything else you want to talk about here? Yep. No, we had the far end. We had an animal bay. We had pigs and chickens, goats living in there. We had a slaughter room, so occasionally there'd be a big feast, usually for the press, because people were hungry at the same time. We wanted to convey to the press that we were hungry, so we'd have these huge meals that were photographed and sent the pictures out and say, hey, we're doing great. You wonder why we got hammered by the press, because we were lying to them. The press finds out you're lying to them, you're doomed. And we got heavy hammered for a long time because of stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part though, the diet was milk and eggs from those animals, not the animals themselves. You get hungry, you're going to eat a lot of things you might not have thought you would eat. So.
What was Bass's original motivation?
Bass was part of a group of people who've been living communally since the early 70s. In a small place called Synergy Ranch just south of Santa Fe. And this group, because of Bass's money, was able to do more than just build eco-friendly homes in Santa Fe. They branched out and went all over the world to do various kinds of projects. Ed, unlike his brothers, who also inherited billions of dollars, was the black sheep of the family. He was much more interested in funding conservation issues and eco-restoration projects, unlike his brothers, who I think own a quarter of Disney and all of San Diego's water rights. A little bit different mindset there. Ed was always putting money into things that he believed in, and this was one of them. But it was not his idea per se. This is a group of people living together, and it had a charismatic leader, a guy named John Allen. His name is all over a bunch of books about this place. John was more inspiration than dictatorial, but he had his moments. But he essentially motivated this group to think beyond the box. He had a phrase called, dream no small dreams. And it was essentially, okay, we have Ed Bass who loves what we're doing. Don't think small, think big. And this project manifested from that idea, that thought process. And Ed was financier, John was more inspiration. In the group was also the architect and assistant engineer for this project as well. Getting covered in ants, are we? Yeah. You know what's nice about these crazy ants? Even though they're crazy, they don't bite. So we used to have billions of them in here. Alan All was in here doing a show for Scientific American Frontiers. He was getting covered in ants. He says, what's with the ants? He said, well, they got in by mistake and they took over. So this is the remnant of billions of crazy ants that managed to wreak havoc inside of here because they weren't planned for it. But they don't bite. Let's head downstairs. Downstairs there is no sunlight, therefore we don't try to grow anything. It's where we keep all the machinery. And back in the day, of course, machinery was our lifeblood, so we didn't use names like basement or cellar for such a thing. We needed something a little grander sounding and cool on top of it. So instead of this being, of course this is the Biosphere because of all the biology, well if you have a whole room full of technology, then how could it not be the Technosphere? So we're heading for the Technosphere. It is a little windy down there, you need to hang on to your clothing. that's what we're retrieving. What can't get in is what has been chasing them all morning. The hawks and the ravens, they're all still outside waiting for them to come back. You see them sitting out here sometimes, just waiting for these guys to come back after the whipper. Talking about the bird that was flying around upstairs, that we have birds that get in here from time to time, but they're not living in here per se. They're certainly not the original pollinators that we had here at one point. It's windy in this room, this hallway, because we use hallways for air ducts. We don't have separate air ducts. No reason to have something separate this big. We just use the hallway. So we have 3 air handlers that are capable of blowing air through here that control climate to the desert. And the air is coming out of the air handler and it's escaping through like those holes in the ceiling there that goes right up into those caves you saw up above. And so we're distributing the air out, pushing air out through the middle of the biome. When we walk through this door, we're switching air ducts. We're going to go on the intake side now. And if you look to the left as we walk through here, you'll see daylight. That's where the air is returning on the side, all on the perimeter of the biomes, coming back down and getting recirculated and pumped right back into the front end. So we're going to walk into this other airwalk here. If you hold the door open for each other, we're going to pass off the room, right?
Let's go up. Let's go up.
Big box is one of 52 air handlers we have inside. We've got 26 big ones like this and 26 small ones over in the human habitat. There's not much to go wrong with these boxes. I mean, people talk about, all the maintenance that's required, but these are pretty simple devices we got. Something made out of stainless steel, for instance, and very, very well-made equipment, motors and so on. All we're doing is blowing air through a big box, and in the middle of the box are 3 radiators. And the radiators receive different temperatures of water that we generate over in the energy center. What is far more sophisticated, not these boxes, but the software that runs everything. We use software to control the rainfall, but we also use software to control these devices. Instead of valves that we could have being turned open and closed, instead we've got all these computer-controlled valves and flow meters just all over the place. And they allow one person now on the outside of here to sit in front of several computer screens and run the show. Rarely do I ever see an operator have to come down in here, and rarely do we ever see maintenance people here because this stuff just doesn't break. It's pretty simple and made really well. So a 60 horsepower fan blows air through this box, and then there's tower water, chilled water, and heating water available to run through the radiators. Now, tower water is what we like to use to cool the air because it's not very expensive to produce, but it's not very cold. That's definitely not what we're running today. What we're running today is chilled water. Chilled water is coming from an ammonia chiller on the outside, much more expensive for us to produce it, but it is cold, and it makes the air really cold. So not only are we cooling the air with that, but we're also causing water vapor to condense on that radiator because it's so cold. We collect that water, and that's how we're putting it back to rainwater tanks. These are 7 50,000-gallon rainwater tanks we just walked past over here. Condensate, if you don't mess with it, is pretty clean. It's essentially just evaporation. If you don't have a dust storm or something like that cutting up your water, your air, you're going to have clean water when you cause it to condense. So over in the human habitat, the clean potable water was coming from condensate units. Take it right straight from the air handler, right into a big set of storage tanks, ran it through a simple sand filter, and that was it. That's all we had to do to it. We could put it right into the taps. People could drink it, cook with it, clean with it. It was good to go. We had an antibacterial system on standby if we ever needed it. We never needed it. It was always clean water coming out of that system. And this is not something we invented. This is something that NASA had been working on in the mid-70s. They published their work in 1980, And we thought this was a pretty slick system. This was a way of getting rid of a whole lot of filtration that you need normally to get water that you wouldn't want to drink to the point where you would want it to drink it. In this case, we're having water that has some nutrients in it that we can use as really good irrigation water for the farm. It has enough nutrients in it, you don't have to fertilize the farm. Then, because we're a closed system, we wait for the evaporation to come up off the farm soil, and you grab that, and that's clean water. Now, obviously, NASA would find interest in that in other closed systems, kind of like the space station. We thought it was perfect for this place because we could generate evaporation and we could collect it in enough quantity to make it worthwhile. So this was something we borrowed and it worked really, really well. I'm babbling. Any questions while we're here?
How long did you test the system before you put people in it?
Well, there was a number of processes. He's asking about the length of time before we put people in. One of the things that had to happen is when we brought plants up from Africa and from South America, the collections were pretty small. It was like saplings that they were falling out of the rainforest. And we had to put them first into this large greenhouse we have on site here called a quarantine bay. Because they had to get inspected by the Arizona folks, Department of Ag, before we were allowed to bring them in here. Well, during that time, they're growing. They're in a controlled environment. They're growing in. When we started sealing this place up, we weren't ready to have people inside, but we were already starting to grow enough plant leaf size to generate what we thought was enough oxygen for folks. So there was some preparation period. And that included the farm, because you didn't want to walk in here and have to already start harvesting your dinner that night. We had a backstore. We were farming about a year before, just to collect enough food so that there was something to walk into. Is that sort of get close to it? Yeah. Is that a question? That was a child raising their hand. Okay. All right. Yeah. You're wondering how this applies to the outside world?
Yeah, like did you come out with some research from here and that now applied in the outside?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, yeah, there's two different types of research done in here. One was, could we build artificial ecosystems so that we could grow both food and oxygen and create clean water? That was in the first phase of our existence here. That has applications, not so much here, but if you're up on Mars somewhere, that gets pretty handy. But you won't have a glass building. You're going to be underground because it's too cold and things like that. In the second wave of investigation, this elevated CO2 experiment, extremely important because we discovered that plants, up to a certain point, grow faster the more CO2 they get. So CO2 in the atmosphere is going up, the plants are trying to keep it from going up any faster than it already is. That's a good thing. That's called a negative feedback loop. We discovered, however, that flattens out after over 700 parts per million, which is less than half of what we have in addition to what we have now. Those plants can't use anymore. They start saturating, and therefore the plants won't have any mitigating effect on rising CO2 past the year 2100, we think, according to our models here. So that is what scientists call a tipping point, and we flag a tipping point that you have this gradual change in CO2, which is no big deal, as that's what people think. But it flips some dynamic at some point, and then things can all of a sudden take off. So that came from our second phase of investigation here, and obviously it has a lot of consequences for outside. Is that true? Yeah. We're going to walk down to the south lawn, but as we do, this is the tip of the iceberg, the Technosphere. You can see the rest of it if you just walk up to this window here. Don't walk up there, but look through the window. You'll see the rest of the Technosphere just goes on forever, all the way back and forth the rainforest. Kind of an interesting site. Check it out. We're going to walk on down to the one.
bare and it's almost like the desert. So this is what they're doing. But what
Real weird
It aerates the water. So there's an aeration effect to it, but it's also keeping the water from getting pulled up somewhere in the water.
Do they have vitamins? You betcha. One of the problems, I think I mentioned is the glass doesn't pass UV light. So people's skin was looking pretty ratty by the time they got out after 2 years, and it wasn't helping any that they were eating sweet potatoes 3 meals a day. So the beta carotene effect was pretty obvious. You know, skin with no skin tone and yellow from beta carotene. It was pretty exciting. So yeah, vitamin D was required as a supplement for sure. Yeah, I mean there was a couple concessions to things like that. What one might call expendables, and that would have been one of them. I mean, you had to have hair shampoo and stuff like that as well, you know, something to clean yourself with. So, but it was a vino products. Hey, yeah, not that you can afford a vino, but that's all right. This is the transition from being under the biosphere to no longer being under it. We're going to walk over through this tunnel into one of the lungs, the big white domes you've seen from outside. They're set off a bit, so it's not right next to us here. We're going to use the tunnel to get over there. It's about 200 feet in this direction. Obviously, when you walk into it, you got to watch you don't walk into this. You're going to keep your head down. You're going to watch your steps as you walk through here. At the entrance to the lung, you're going to know you're there because you're going to have to duck down quite a ways to get into the entrance. It's lower than this, and the trick really is to get down low enough, get yourself inside of it. It's 8 feet of very smooth metal at that point. You just jet right on through. You'll pop out on the other side into a much less confining airspace than this is. Off we go.
Didn't have to die.
Call yourself your closed system. You can't leave. You've got to keep the leaks down and go for it. And by the way, you have to see money. The only one that has water is water. Start water tank. You have to take care of that. We have the space down here to put it in the line. So here's the issue with if we really had that in mind, just to go a very large water, we want to win. The window people flexibility. The problem is that glazing has the potential for pinholes in there. Not very big, but they all add up. And it really adds up if you don't keep air pressure inside for 95 to 60 air pressure on one side. So we didn't want to have to get until we wanted to go higher air pressure. You're trying to push air out there. Or we didn't want to be long with the same thing's true. We had to feel air pressure. We started pulling stuff in. We didn't want to do that either. I think that was worse and worse to come out. The issue is that we have one there's a relationship between the pressure, air pressure, and also the volume. And a very simple term is that air when it changes temperature is volume. If air starts to heat up, daytime sunlight, it wants to expand. And let that air expand, then there's no pressure there. That's how the formula works. So we had to have a way of allowing air, the room that needed to expand to get more, needed less room and start to cool down and contract. And that's what this thing does. It moves the total 55 feet up and down to make the total air volume get a whole lot larger, a whole lot smaller. In the middle, what stabilizes this is a 16-ton that's hanging there by difference of air pressure. Slightly less air pressure above it, that's what keeps this thing up in the air. If we fastened it down with chains or something or the table, it wouldn't move. That wouldn't move. We had to make it sealed. And it can stay sealed and move because of the synthetic that allows this whole thing to actually get tight. The only issue with this is that it's controlling air pressure is that it weighs about 20 tons. That 20 tons of hardware can do something about the weight of that. When it's sitting right down on top of our air, they were trying to keep inside and instead as much as the air out for all those little pinholes. So we had to negate the way this thing was working. We had to get control of it and make it act with it. And there's two parts to the run that help us move it. One is on the inside, the interchange by being below the diagram is one space. And around us is one of the big white domes. And that's the outer shell of it. It's a separate space all around. What's in that separate space, we have these very large control doors that take air from the middle space and look outside. That runs the air pressure all around us by less than half of this current. That's all that makes because we're dealing with such a new surface. Back in the day when we were closed system, we were dealing with water and air pressure versus the air pressure outside. If this started to drift one way or the other, the computer would cause it to either expand the airspace or contract the airspace, changing the volume, thereby changing the pressure, not directly. Pretty interesting system. Pretty simple in some ways, but obviously pretty big. We have not been a closed system now for decades, and it's still up in the air. But we don't need it. It's no longer needed. We don't have to adjust for air pressure. At night, we let it back down. We let it settle back down by 10 o'clock at night, it'll come down on speed. We'll look it up the next morning before you all show up. Just so you can see it. When we didn't do that, we had tours and tours back. There was something here, this was the worst part. Because you couldn't see it. This whole memory. This saucer was down on the original electrical speed. If you wanted to see it, it was like Marley. I wasn't here at the time, I don't understand. We now use those same things. We got the fans. Just look it up. Makes it much easier. Now, we're actually what used to be an emergency airlock takes us into that leak. And once that door comes open, we now have a leak. That's enough of a leak that we can do this with the I'm not going to leave it open that long, but if you look at it carefully, the whole thing starts to go apart. The whole way starts to come down. Then it comes down in pulses. It's not a steady progress. It comes down, settle, settle. But you can watch it. There's something in the background there. You'll be able to see what's going on. And there's a window on the far side of the store that wants you to put it over